Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the program Stewardship with SMB, live from the studios of RTV in Port Harcourt. This program is watched on GoTV channel 142 and on our social media handles such as YouTube and Facebook and RTV Online. My name is Solomon Nelson. Today we're going to talk about disability rights and, of course, those that have been at the forefront of campaigning for the rights of people living with disabilities. One of such organizations is the FAECARE Foundation, otherwise known as FAECARE Foundation, an organization with a vision to add value to the lives of target and vulnerable groups in our society and, of course, communities, being orphans and vulnerable children, persons with disabilities, youth, and, of course, the less privileged. But I won't be the one to talk about the organization itself. I have with me in the studio Ambassador Freki Essien, the Executive Director of FAECARE Foundation with me. Well, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, also with me is Obomudia Ovoweru. Is it?
Yes.
Okay, it's also of the FAECARE Foundation.
Yeah.
Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start this way. First, Freki, what is this FAECARE Foundation all about?
Okay, thank you very much. So FAECARE Foundation is a non-governmental organization, and in a nutshell, we provide step gap support services to the target vulnerable groups that you mentioned. We've been in official capacity since 2013, and we continue to bring about projects and programs in our different thematic areas to ensure that we run our vision, which is adding value to the lives of these target vulnerable groups. One of such programs is why we're here in the studio today, because we have different curated programs. And one of the core aspects of FAECARE Foundation, especially when it comes to persons with disabilities, is not just empowering them, but also building their capacity to be able to advocate for their rights and pushing for disability rights, as it were, in the South-South region of Nigeria. And so we are here today because we have a project called Disability Rights Initiative Project. And for this span of the project, we are focusing on accessibility.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Week in, week out, your theme is accessibility. What is this accessibility all about? Why is it important for the ease of access with people with disabilities?
Okay, so I guess it's still channeled to me.
Yes.
So as I was saying, so with disability rights is broad and wide, but for this span, because we would come and talk about other things, we focus on accessibility. Accessibility is an English word, but for persons with disabilities, we're speaking about the mental and the physical conditions that allow a person who identifies as a person with disability to be able to enter, use, and exit any space, information, or communication, as it were, on an equal basis with others. So I've said quite a bit. Accessibility for persons with disabilities is not just physical, but also the mental conditions that allow a person who identifies as a person with disability to be able to enter, use, effectively use, and exit a space on an equal basis as others will. That's what accessibility is for us as persons with disabilities.
Well, accessibility also means reachability, availability, approachability. What does it mean to you?
Okay. For accessibility, for it to be available, like creating, like when we talk about public spaces, you know, for you to enter a building, for persons with disability, like a building with multiple staircases, there should be available ramp to ensure that these persons, like people on wheelchair, could be able to enter the building freely without any obstruction. So that is what we talk when we talk about availability. Then usability. After entering the space now, the facilities, like the equipment, the product inside the building, they should be usable for persons with disability. For example, the toilets. If someone on wheelchair like enters the toilet, he should be able to use the toilet and come out of it without any obstruction. So that is when the concept of usability also comes in.
Okay, so what are some of the areas that you have found comfortable with this accessibility thing in terms of, like today you came in here, Freki came in here, she found it very easy to access our building.
You should have asked Freki if she found it easy to access.
Did you find it easy?
Let's start there, so I will answer you.
Yeah, did you find it easy?
Not really, but it was better than most places.
but it was better than most places.
Yes.
So what are the challenges?
As FAECARE had challenged to enter, you might understand, but we never.
It doesn't really matter.
FAECARE was the one entering.
No, let him say something and I can turn to you.
No problem.
So,
Is it about the station?
no. What I'm saying is that what are the you have? It's a principle. We have just discussed it.
Okay, so
and there are challenges surrounding.
yes, the challenges on accessibility, they are quite numerous. Let me just go general. For example, in transportation services, it was this week, I think on Tuesday. Yes, on Tuesday we had a meeting in our office, and someone on wheelchair came to our office. Then after the meeting, I said, okay, let me take the person to the road to get transport service, because it was going towards Rumola. Do you know that when we came out, we stood in the road for over 10 minutes. It was an hurry for a presentation, and we stood in the road for over 10 minutes. This shuttle bus, they will come. Once they notice this person on wheelchair, they will just like drive past. So this is kind of inconvenience, and is it's kind of discrimination against these persons with disability until somebody finally came to. So in terms of transportation, we have inaccessible transportations in Rivers State. So these are some of the I just talked to transportation.
What are the challenges surrounding accessibility? You said I should ask you, but I know that our team is very friendly. It's not inaccessible. You came in freely, even to our studio from the car park. I saw you when you came in, and you were comfortable. Were you not?
Okay, so in answering the issues around accessibility challenges, so for persons with disabilities, I would like us to clearly understand that when it comes to issues around accessibility, we have physical accessibility. When you consider physical accessibility, you're talking about the built environment. So what are the barriers that can hinder a person with disability from accessing a built environment? You think about things like he said, steps. You think about things like the size of the doorway for the wheelchair. You think about materials used on the ground that would maybe make somebody's crutches slide. You think about washrooms, that the doorway to the washroom is really small, so a person is not able to enter. So you think about access. Now, across the accessibility continuum, it's not just about entry only, but about use. Because sometimes we stop at just being able to enter. Consider the importance of using that facility or space. I'll give an instance. I went to a recreation facility. It is very beautiful because it is approachable, you can enter inside. But the thing that was very peculiar to me was the fact that the recreational facilities were not accessible to persons with disabilities. So the swimming pool was on an elevated platform, the place for the barbecue was now downstairs. So they forgot that accessibility does not just stop at being able to enter into your facility. Now let's talk about another type of accessibility, that is communication accessibility. Now, I'm doing this because if you think about barriers to communication, you can begin to remove it, because the barriers are the challenges. So if a person, let's say, that has a sensory or hearing impairment, who uses sign language to communicate, is not able to understand you, there is a barrier to communication. That person automatically does not have access to the information that you're trying to provide. And that is why, well, yes, the physical environment of RSTV was conducive enough, because I didn't need to contemplate with any lift, but the information from RSTV needs to move to become more accessible to persons who have sensory impairment. So one of the first things that can be done intentionally would be in news. Have a sign language interpreter come for your major news bulletins and interpret, so that that information, the highlights of information that come at news time, that person can get it. Why? Because misinformation is a problem for everyone, and we live in a digital age where if access to information and fake news is so real. But when we have proper news outlets, we know that the news is verified and controlled. And then the last thing about accessibility that I would like to talk about is when it comes to the digital space. Why? Because we live in the digital world. We have phones, we have gadgets, and the world has become so amazing that people can access the world through the digital space. And you will see clear examples of removing of barriers to accessibility in your mobile devices, just as simple as it is. So these are some of the challenges, as it were, when it comes to some of these fringe and structured accessibility issues for persons with disabilities.
All right, so Ovewero, tell us a little bit about accessibility continuum in the context of disability.
Okay, continuum, I want to talk about continuum, is like a gradual transition. But a gradual transition from not being accessible to being accessible. You understand? So, like we said, for in the physical, we'll look at when we look at physical structures, and we find out that these structures, they are not accessible. So, what are the things we are supposed to do? The things need to be put in place to make sure that these facilities, they are accessible for persons with disability. This is when the accessibility continuum comes in.
If I may, with respect to the continuum, just to clarify what he's saying, continuum means a continuum. It means a flow. And I try to use that flow in most of my examples. So when you talk about accessibility continuum, think about the flow of access from entry to exit. That's when we're speaking about the accessibility continuum. It allows you to think about accessibility more holistically, where you do not stop at just with the ability for the person to enter, or the ability for the person to use the facility. Imagine, let me use a mobile device, the person who has a visual impairment. If the person has access to a mobile device, but the person is not able to use it, you know that the accessibility continuum has been broken. But now, what is allowing that person with a visual impairment to use it is the fact that there are accessibility features in the design of that device. So the person activates it and talk back. The person is able to use that device. So that person's access has continued to flow until the person doesn't need to use it and drops it. So when you're thinking of accessibility, whether you're doing a program, whether you're doing a project, whether it is a physical building or communication, think about that flow from approach to use to exit. Till that person is able to leave that space, that's when accessibility has been achieved.
All right, Frankie, your organization, FAECARE Foundation, has been at the forefront of advocating for a better life for people living with disabilities. Could you share some of the feedback you've been getting? We've been organizing symposiums, workshops, and all of that. Share some of the feedbacks you're getting from all of these talk shows and all of that.
Okay, so one of the key things we have observed is the fact that awareness was not very robust when it came to knowledge as regards disability rights. Welfare, easily, because a person has a birthday, or even as much as the state government, they want to celebrate maybe International Day, and then the first thought when it comes to disability is welfare. Now, while welfare is crucial, it's not the end of everything, because rights will finish. Why not employ so that the person can buy their rights? So we're talking about disability in the framework of disability rights, and that we've seen that level of awareness when it comes to the rights of persons with disabilities was low in the state. So we have used a lot of media outlets to be able to deal with that issue of awareness, and will continue using different medium. The other one that I would like to quickly mention is the consciousness of inclusivity. A lot of times people think of inclusivity as an aftermath, but rather we're beginning to see that change, where people will begin to think inclusivity from the beginnings of a plan. So they plan for inclusion, and those are things that we're doing.
All right, that has been Ambassador Frankie Essien, Executive Director of FAECARE Foundation, and of course Bomodia Ovoero, both of whom are of FAECARE Foundation. We'll take a short break. If you have just joined us, you're still on to the program Stewardship with SMB, live from the studios of RH TV, Port Harcourt. We are on GoTV channel 142, and of course our social media handles are not left out, Facebook and YouTube at RH TV Online. My guests are Ambassador Frankie Essien, Executive Director of FAECARE Foundation, and Mr. Bomodia Ovoero is also of FAECARE Foundation. Gentlemen, lady and gentlemen, welcome again to the program.
Thank you.
All right, I don't want to dwell so much on whether the federal government has made adequate budgetary allocation for people living with disabilities. But I'm tempted to ask, because you cannot be advocating for the betterment of people living with disabilities without getting the government at the center or at the subnational involved. What is your relationship with both the federal and the state, your organization, in making sure that people living with disabilities are remembered and taken care of by government at all levels?
Okay, I guess the question is channeled to me. So one of the things I would like to address is that we like the word persons with disabilities as opposed to persons living with disabilities. It's just what we like. And then the second one is that when it comes to the issue of budgetary allocation, as it were, for disability affairs. So at national level, we have the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, which is an agency that was established with the assent to law of the Disability Act of 2018. So with that law came the commission, which we are in the second cycle of an executive secretary and an executives for the NCPWD. And one of the things that happened in the first cycle under James Lalu at federal level was creating a lot of awareness and synergy and partnership with other commissions, other ministries and agencies to ensure that they understood the issues around disability, as it were, at the federal level and the provisions of the law. Now, in this next cycle, one of the series of partnerships is as regards improving and stepping up budgetary allocation at federal level for disability affairs. Now, you hear me talking about things in the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, and that is why it is important for disability to begin to be seen as an affair, a developmental affair. So, for instance, in River State, issues of disability are domiciled in the Ministry of Social Welfare and Rehabilitation. But while they are domiciled there, they're not given the fullest attention. Why? Because that ministry is responsible for social welfare as well as child welfare in the state, and then we have rehabilitation. So the focus a lot of times is with the medical model, which is rehabilitation, and the welfare model. So it is important for the state as a matter of urgency to create an agency for disability. Why? Because it will begin to inform inclusivity along the systems of the state. So we're talking about the different ministries, departments, and agencies. So within each ministry, there is a disability desk officer that informs. Even the government has, we should have what we call a special advisor to the governor on disability affairs. It informs that, yes, whatever the project the governor is running is inclusive. Whatever plans the government is running is inclusive. This office is also going to have the responsibility on state level to begin to push for things like budgetary allocation. So what we currently have in the state is that for ministries that are inclusive, they could have specialized programs for persons with disabilities. Now, specialized programming for persons with disabilities is good, but we need to think further, because you can have programs that are inclusive. So for instance, Ministry of Women Affairs, let's say you have a plan for an empowerment project for 500 rural women in River State. That project can serve at least 5% of women being women with disabilities that are in rural areas. They don't need another special program to empower. I don't know if you understand. Yeah. So that's why we're pushing. So one of the things that we are in FAECARE do is we have things like stakeholder engagements. We're having one coming up on the 21st of March, and that is speaking to government agencies, that's ministries, departments and agencies, and speaking to this effect. We continue to speak until the state government has a structure that will allow them to be more exclusive. Now they're doing well, but it's sporadic. So we have to be, what we're saying is that intentionality when it comes to disability affairs in the state. River State is a mature state. So we have to have. It is. Let's
in terms of its.
You understand? It's not like when I say
population-wise.
Not population-wise. That in terms of where we are coming from. No, when they say
economic viability.
When you say Lagos, you say
it's a mature state.
Rivers is following. It's following closely.
Interesting.
You know, so we should be at the fore of when it comes to inclusion. When they say, that's a very inclusive. If we talk about inclusive states in Nigeria, what will come to your mind immediately is a place like Lagos. Because even before the federal law, that's what was there. Lagos State Disability, they are there, and they have a disability law. We are not saying they are perfect, but that shows you how intentional they are about disability. So we cannot be plain. Now let me shock you. River State in 2012 had a law, they called the River State Welfare Enhancement Law for Persons with Disabilities. And it was signed in 2012, and it's sitting on the shelves because there is no force behind it. And these are things where, that's why you see at federal level there was an insistence on a commission to push for implementation, to push for budgetary allocation and things like that. So if that structure can be copied in state, it will go a long way in pushing issues around disability. So we don't keep having silos and silos and silos of pushes. So you have NDDC will push, this one will push. We have a push that is kind of from top to bottom, while we continue to do bottom to top.
All right, that was a nice one. So, Overa.
Yes.
Do you think that government is fair enough in its formulation of policies towards people living with disabilities?
Okay, like
or should I say government and society, are they fair enough towards people living with disabilities? maybe Frankie will talk about it, but let's hear your opinion.
Okay, for me, I don't know. The consciousness is not really there. Like we rightly say, they're not really conscious about the affairs of persons with disabilities in the state. Because if they were really conscious, the law that guides and process persons with disability would have been signed, and it would have been a working document. But
there's no implementation.
There's no implementation, so everybody is just doing everything on their own. So I think they are not
fair enough.
They are not fair enough for persons with disabilities.
Do you share the same view with this?
So this is my notion. It's okay to do a thing in a certain way, but it is also good to grow up. If a child stays crawling and it doesn't work, a parent will be worried, and etc. etc. So we have stayed around welfare issue. Welfare is key. But I come back to the fact that it's not the only aspect of disability that can happen. So when you talk about policies, the policies don't even necessarily exist. I wanted to ask you what policies, what policies, they don't necessarily exist. So we're saying, okay, for instance, currently there is a push to repeal the past law that was welfare-based to make it a rights-based law. And of course, with the turmoils that was happening in the recent government, it had to be held a bit. But there is a push for a rights-based law for persons with disabilities in the state. And I'm using this media to speak and say that if that law comes to your table, you're sitting on any committee and it comes to you, then give it your attention. These are some of the things that we can push and talk about. And so just speaking to say that, think about disability as rights. Employability, 5%, every aspect, education inclusive, healthcare inclusive. Don't just think about it in the context of, oh, let me just help them. Benevolence. Benevolence is good, but it's not everything.
Okay, you've been organizing capacity building programs and empowerment programs. What category of people does your organization empower? And what is your source of funds?
Okay, so from the introduction, you see that we cater to different categories of vulnerable groups we clearly identified. Then we also curated them along our thematic areas. We have education, we have health, we have nutrition, we have disability inclusion, like that, empowerment. So when it comes to persons with disabilities, we have an empowerment program. It comes in two folds. The first type of empowerment program is through vocational skills building. And one aspect of our program will focus on women with disabilities.
So, okay.
And then the other one is where we do both men and women. That's for empowerment, teaching them skills that can improve their livelihood and give them more economic empowerment. The other aspect of empowerment that people always judge is capacity building. The ability to be knowledgeable enough to speak up for your rights should you find yourself in a situation. I feel that that's even better. Why? Because this is not empowerment for just the individual, but if a person with disability goes to an organization and is able to get them to form policies that are inclusive, the person does not just speak for themselves, but for other persons with disabilities, it opens more doors. So we do capacity and empowerment for persons with disabilities under these two notions, which is empowering them with knowledge and skills to do advocacy. And you saw them coming to the studio to actually speak. I would have easily have come. It was important for us to allow them to begin to speak and have their voices amplified and speak as experts using evidence-based advocacy. And of course, the other one is empowerment so that their hands are strong like everyone else.
Okay, for government to be able to cater for everybody, government must know how many persons live in a particular place. Do you know how many adult citizens living with disabilities in Nigeria?
So I know that you like living. We're going to practice. So I say persons with disabilities. Practice. Say it with me. Persons with disabilities.
Of course, persons with disabilities.
Yes. Thank you. Leave the living out. Thank you. All right.
Persons with disabilities.
Yes. Okay. So with respect to numbers help with planning.
Okay.
Numbers help with planning, and that role, the duty of censuses lies with the National Population Commission. And so when the next, like at national level, there was supposed to be a census that was supposed to happen that was postponed. So one of the things that was happening at national level by way of advocacy was ensuring that the survey indices, especially with the Washington Group questions, would reflect so that they can capture disability correctly. Now, that question that you're asking me can easily be solved if the government had an office that catered to disability affairs, because they would have the numbers of persons with disability. I'm a researcher, so we use a lot of tools to be able to calculate for population when we're doing population studies. But as regards to the numbers, there's an office that must be responsible for that. either the National Bureau of Statistics or the National Population Commission, the office in state, and establishing a disability affairs office or the Ministry of Social or whatever should be given that responsibility to ensure that they capture that data. It will help in planning.
Interesting. You want to add any information to what Frankie has said?
She has said it all.
Oh, I've said it all.
You
Let me add
said it all?
one
Yeah,
more.
you can
You know,
add.
it's easy to talk about government. For me, I want to speak to persons in society out there. The tendency to want to not concern yourself with issues around disabilities is easy. I can say that because I have what we call an acquired disability from a road traffic accident. So I've lived as a person without disability for a very long time before I had spinal cord injury and have to use a wheelchair. You don't need to wait to know a person that has a disability. If you're offering a public service, think about inclusion in your office, in your space, in the service that you prefer. Don't wait to know. So if your service is to the public, understand that the public is diverse, and one of the persons who could be your customer base are also persons with disabilities. So when you do not allow access, you put a barrier to access to your services and your products. And that is me speaking to persons in society.
All right, okay. That's Frankie speaking to persons with disabilities.
No, the society.
Society, and of course, which involves everybody.
Yes.
All right, Ambassador Frankie is here, Executive Director of FAECARE Foundation. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure to be on Steve.
And Emmanuel Obomodia of Owero.
Yes.
Also, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's it on our program. Join us again on Monday, and we'll bring you another guest on a different topic. My name is Solomon Nelson.